What is up, everyone? Hope y'all are having a good Tuesday. I know it's not Tuesday. It's Tuesday for me. So I'm going to pretend it's Tuesday for you. It's probably Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. It is officially overall season. I was cleaning out my closet a little bit. New year, new me. And I found a bunch of overalls that Rachel got for me last year for work that I hadn't worn in a while. So I've had them out the past few days, um, getting used to them. The only thing, this is weird. I don't know if I should say this. I guess if I wear these with just a t-shirt initially, the like bib rubs on my nipples and they get kind of chafed. So you got to break them in. Either wear a heavy shirt or just deal with the pain. But I don't wear them all the time. So I've been rocking two shirts underneath there so I don't get the chafed nipples. But I hope that was a great start to the podcast. If you would have asked me last year when I started this podcast if I would be talking about chafed nipples, episode 2 of 2024, I don't think I'd believe you. Well, maybe I believe you. I wouldn't say it's out of the question, knowing me. But I wouldn't understand where it came from or what it pertained to. But if you can relate, you know the struggle is real with the first few wears of overalls during the winter seasons. Let's see what we're going to dig into today. It is nasty out here. It rained all weekend. Yesterday was actually beautiful. Um, but today, rain all morning, and then it's going to get heavier later. I believe the governor declared a state of emergency for 5 p.m. We're supposed to get like an inch of rain. So after I get done recording this, I'm going to go outside and make sure that my generator is up and running and has some fresh gasoline in it so I don't get stuck without electricity and or heater at 5 p.m. when I hop off our other podcast. So that's what I'm going to do after this. A little bit more podcast prep for round 2. This week on the main podcast, we have a guest named Rachel Sylvain. She is the CEO of AGS HVAC Services. And I'm excited to talk to her, obviously, a woman in the construction field, and get her on, see what her take is. So hop on over to the main Modern Craftsman podcast and give that a listen. That's going to be this week's podcast. Last week we had an Andersen employee on last week. We recorded that, I'm pretty sure, before Christmas, but it took a minute to get that rolling out. So hopefully you guys and girls are keeping up to date on them. You've been enjoying them as well. If you have any insight as to what you'd like to see, what you want more of, constructive criticism, whatever that may be, you can send that to the Modern Craftsman Instagram. You could send that to the email. You can send that to me, Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com. Whatever works for you. We make it easy here at Modern Craftsman. Also, hop on the website, buy some merch. I know we have some Hive notebooks up there, some pencils. No more t-shirts for the time being, but we'll probably make another run of them. Maybe before IBS. Not sure. We'll see. What else is going on? I have a little repair job tomorrow. I've been down. My brother bought a new house, so I've been down helping him get up and running down there. He's about an hour from me now. That's about it. Not too much. Just getting ready for 2024, getting things up and going and planning the rest of my year, taking care of some podcast related stuff, some things around the house, invoicing, closing out other things. There's just a bunch. I'm not gonna lie. I thought I was gonna have time to get everything in order and get my life in order. And every single day I wake up and I have so much shit to do that it doesn't feel like I get anything done. It's the second week in January, and I feel like nothing has been done that I've needed to get done. I have had less time, I feel as though, than when I'm working on projects. And realistically, I should have more time, but it's been a struggle. Just a million things to do and not enough hours in the day. Um, so this week, the podcast blog post. Also, hop on the website, moderncraftsman.co, and check out the blog posts. Share them, read them. Again, it's going to give you a little bit different flavor than this recorded audio version. I'm sure that's super convenient for you to listen to this here, but if you hop on the website, check that out. Pass the word along with the written blog as well. I appreciate that. What else? What else? Oh, um, sponsors, AndersenWindows.com. That's ANDERSEN Windows.com. They, I guess also KuikenBrothers.com, KUIKEN Brothers.com. They are carrying Andersen pass-through windows at their New Jersey and New York locations. So kind of a 2-for-1 right now. If you guys haven't seen these windows, they're really cool. Bringing the outside in, inside out. You can put them on a kitchen counter, and then there's a sill. But basically, these windows can open up. They can slide over and create a pass-through from an exterior wall so that people are out back, if you have a deck, a patio, a pool, that you could open up that window and have the countertop pass through, and they're really neat. I hadn't seen them before. Maybe I have, but seeing them on the website is really cool. It's one of their featured products. Just a really a neat. Oops, sorry, I think my mic unplugged here. A really neat detail that would be pretty cool to integrate on a job if you have an exterior interior remodel going on. Um, if you want to check these windows out, they are available at multiple Kuiken Brothers locations. Let's see. It looks like Warwick, Wantage, Midland Park, Emerson, Fairlawn, Garfield, Newark, Roseland, and Succasauna. So you can check them out. If you're unsure if they carry this stuff or if they carry the products that you need or they have the displays, you can reach out to um, any of their phone numbers and somebody will be able to put you in touch with the right location. Just hop on their website. It's really easy to navigate. They have a great website. I use Kuiken Brothers mostly for my interior trim. I know that you guys have heard me talk about this before, but their classical molding collection, there's second to none. There's nothing better. The profiles are amazing. The product is amazing. I love the fact that it's finger jointed primed poplar. It's just way more stable than pine. I've had so many less issues with installing this molding, whether it is in the summer or in the winter, and then putting on the HVAC, pulling all the moisture out. It's way more stable. It doesn't move, but it looks better too, way better. I always say if you think you're going to have a difficult time upselling their product, get a sample of it and then go find a comparable primed finger jointed pine molding and bring that to the customer just to feel the difference between the two and see the difference between the two in person. And I don't think you'll have any trouble upselling them. But thanks to our sponsors, Andersen Windows and Kuiken Brothers. We appreciate you standing behind this midweek Modern Craftsman. Appreciate the support and everything that you've done for me. So go buy some windows and go buy some molding now, or else I'm going to stop doing this. All right. So this week's blog is on project ownership. I actually just had a consulting call this morning with a nice guy up from New Hampshire, and we spoke about a different topic. But then at the end of the job, he was really struggling with a customer who he's worked for forever, and the customer started using it. I guess the job was fed to him by a painter. So the customer tapped into his network through his painter, and the customer likes to manage a lot of the projects and uses his electrician and other subs. So now there's bigger projects that he's doing, and the customer wants to essentially handle those aspects of the project, whether it's a control thing or a financial thing where he's trying to save a little bit of markup. Maybe he just thinks that this is the norm for construction. The guy I was on the phone with was struggling with not having control over the entire product and the entire process of the job. And I was telling him that it's funny that he brought this up because my midweek this week, which I wrote last night, was actually on the same thing. It was ownership of a project and how important that is to me. um, and we got on a bit of a tangent talking about that, but yeah, very relatable. Mine, this week, essentially, I was thinking about some lessons learned over this past year, and obviously, there's a ton of lessons. There's lessons every day, but a ton of lessons through the years. And this past year was no different, right? There was a lot of new lessons. There was a lot of old lessons, a lot of return lessons that I promised I would not make the mistake twice. And for whatever reason, whether it slowly crept up on me or it started one way and then somewhat adapted or transitioned to another, I let my guard down on my past job, and I I conceded to doing things different than the standard that I had set forth and had established over the past 12 to 15 years. Um, Certain things that I do, and I have reasons for doing them. Maybe the sting had worn off. Maybe I had rose-colored glasses on, and I thought it would be a different experience. Maybe I just had other things going on and didn't, you know, pay much mind to it. Maybe I put too much faith in others. Maybe I didn't ask the right questions. Maybe I just screwed up, and I took a job that I shouldn't have taken, or I signed up for something that I shouldn't have signed up for. I'm not sure the answer, but regardless, there were lessons. And the biggest lesson for me, the biggest takeaway this past year was owning my projects and how important it is to own every aspect of a project. So the past few years, I've really focused on holding um, every aspect of a project under my umbrella, contractually under my umbrella. So whether that's design, construction, post construction, whatever that may be, I want to be the main point of contact and I want to hold that contract. Now, that doesn't mean that I have to perform the design work. That doesn't mean that I have to supply the kitchen. That doesn't mean that I have to supply the fixtures or spec the fixtures, but I want to have control over all of that. Um, I want to be the main point of contact. I want to be the one who's responsible and accountable for any issues that may arise. And I want I want to be the one calling the shots. For me, that just makes a better user experience. It's a little bit more work for me, but I find that if I own everything, I'm more accountable. I have nobody to get angry at or upset with but myself. And it's up to me to determine how to resolve any issues or handle any issues, who's accountable for that, who pays for that. Um, it's all on me. And that's really the way that I would prefer it. And I had gotten into that a few years ago. And for my last job, the way the job came on, it was a designer's job. They designed the kitchen, they created the design, the plan, the renovation plans, drawings, specs, scope, and then they um, set the customer up with a list of contractors to interview. They interviewed me. The customers and the designer elected to go with me. So this job was not mine from the get go. So there was, I didn't create the scope, I didn't create the design, I did not approve shop drawings, I didn't approve kitchen layout, fixtures. All of that was handed over to me and provided to me. Um, without me really having a say in that, which is fine when things go well, but when things don't go well, it presents some issues. The hardest thing that I struggled with on this project was this job was put on my plate and brought to me by a designer. So I feel a certain sense of loyalty to the designer because they brought the job and they recommended me, or at least suggested me. But then also, I have a duty and a responsibility and obligation to protect the customer. So when there are issues and when I run into struggles, who do I go to? I also have a duty and a responsibility to protect myself. So the easy answer is, right, you go to the designer and you allow them to fix the issues or come up with solutions. But what happens when the suggested fixes are something that I don't feel I can stand behind, or something um, that isn't the responsibility of the customer to be paying for? I'm set up, my business is set up in a way that I essentially am reimbursed for my time, my rates. I have markups on things, but if I work 8 hours in a day, I'm going to invoice you for 8 hours a day. If Justin works 6 hours in a day, I'm going to invoice you for 6 hours a day plus his markup. My rate is my rate, which includes my markups, my overheads, everything in that. So I don't have a secondary markup on my rate, but on everyone else I do. um, so if there's an issue that I feel was avoidable or should have been avoided, or I had to spend 10, 12, 16 hours fixing, I'm charging the customer for that. But what happens when that issue is something that could have been avoided and should have been avoided and is creating a lesser product, and the fixes that were suggested aren't up to snuff, in your opinion, or I guess in my opinion? Give me 1 second here. Sorry, I gotta fix something on my computer. At that point, I'm in a bit of I feel as though I have a little bit of a conundrum on my hands, right? I have to protect myself. I want to create a product and deliver a product that I 110% stand behind, that's up to my standards and that I'm truly proud of. So I have this obligation and responsibility to myself. I don't want to turn a job over where I have to turn a blind eye to something and be like, that's not the way I would do it. um, but I didn't supply it, so whatever. They said they're fine with that. That's just not my style. I won't do that. If there's a better way to do it, I feel as though it should be done. That's what I'm selling. That's what I that was what was communicated and expressed to the customers when they hired me to do this project. So if it should have been done a certain way and it wasn't, and the suggested fixes were more of band-aids, I can't stand behind that. And I feel as though I have an obligation to myself, and at this point to the customer, to deliver what the standard should be. Um, so what happens when that standard isn't up to snuff, right? It's give and take. There's people make mistakes. Sure. How do we fix this? Let's have a conversation about it. Let's figure out the best way moving forward. But what happens when the suggested fixes aren't what you feel are the right way to address these? The right way is basically not an option. Not by me, but by somebody else, right? Like, no, we won't do that. No, we're not going to reorder that. Um, to me, that puts me in a weird position where it's like, what do I do? Do I just do it and turn a blind eye to it and say, that's as good as it can be, and then I walk out of this project? I had trouble doing that because in my head, and maybe this is just me projecting, but I see myself closing this job out and I see people coming in and seeing this job and being like, well, why did he do it that way? Why is that way? That looks like they're trying to hide something. And that's just not the product that I want to stand behind. That has never been the product that I want to stand behind. So I'm not going to do that now. Um, it would be a little bit easier to do that when I don't own the kitchen cabinets, when I don't own the design, when I don't own fixtures, right? I could say, "Hey, I didn't spec these. I didn't supply these." Sorry, Doug, you might want to blur out the credit card number that I just showed in the picture there. Um, I should probably timestamp that so now that everyone who looks at it, uh, sorry, Doug, made a little bit more extra work for you. Where was I? It's a little bit easier when you don't own that, right? If something was provided to me on a project and it's not up to my snuff, but I don't own it, I can just be like, "Hey, I installed it the way it was told to be installed. I'm all done here. I fulfilled my contractual obligation." Um, I don't necessarily want that. Like, I'm not okay with that. I want it to be right and I want it to be the best that it can be. So while the ownership, right? It would be a lot of times ownership absolves you of responsibility and accountability because you either own it or you don't. When you don't own it, it's not under your contract. It's not an issue. Somebody else should be fixing it. Somebody else should be paying for it. Somebody else should be determining how to fix it. But what happens when whoever is responsible for owning that doesn't own that to the same level that you want to? And on this project, I feel an obligation to myself and to the customers that they paid for a certain level of service, they paid for a certain level of product, and I want to deliver that. So if I'm fixing things that I feel are unavoidable, or excuse me, avoidable, who pays for that? I don't think the customer should pay for that because they already paid for the cabinets, they already paid for a markup, they already paid for the fixtures, whatever it may be. I don't think that they should be paying a a rate on top of the standard installation rate. And again, it's give and take. It's not an hour here, an hour there, or hey, yeah, we didn't account for this, or let's make this field modification. But when you're days into field modifications, on custom items, I don't think that that's fair for the customer because if they were designed correctly, measured correctly, the shop drawings were revised correctly, these issues all would have been accounted for and resolved, and it wouldn't be time spent on the project. So I'm in this weird position where I'm like, I went to the designer, I went to whoever supplied the cabinets, whatever it may be that I'm speaking of, and the fixes aren't up to my snuff. So then I go back and I'm like, whatever, this is the way they want to do it. I think about it and then I'm like, no, I can't do it that way. So do I just eat the labor cost? Do I just do it? Do I fix it? Do I make the field modification? Do I buy the materials I need to fix it? Do I order whatever I need? Do I charge the customer for that time or do I make the designer pay for that? Which, they're probably not willing to. And that's going to make for a really difficult relationship and conversation with the designer. Um, so the ownership aspect comes in where I just realize I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have these conversations. Um, I don't need to design the kitchen. I don't need to supply the cabinets, but I want to own shop drawings. I want to own reviewing shop drawings. I want to own measuring the space. I want to own going through the kitchen cabinet design prior to order, and I wanna own all of that. And yeah, I'm gonna get paid for a certain point of that. It's gonna take my time, but I wanna own that for more than just the financial aspect of it. I wanna own it because at the end of the day, I'm gonna do whatever has to happen to make it right, and I don't want to have to rely on somebody else or their standards to dictate what right is. Um, so this carries itself and trickles down to every aspect of my job. And just like the conversation today with Chris, it's owning subcontractors. It's owning materials supplied by subcontractors, right? If if there's light fixtures that have to be delivered to the project. I want to own when they're going to be there. I want to own having them delivered, making sure where they get delivered, when they get delivered. Again, I don't have to spec them, but I would prefer to purchase them because when I purchase them and they get delivered to the job and I open two of the boxes and I say, hey, the third one's fine, and there's either the wrong fixture in there or a damaged fixture, and then the electrician comes to do his final trim out and he doesn't have all of the fixtures that he needs, I'm the only one to blame. I'm responsible for paying the electrician to come back once that other fixture arrives. That's not on my customer. That's not on the designer. That's on nobody but me. Um, and I prefer that. I prefer that because I believe that once you relinquish control and once you relinquish the accountability and the responsibility and the ownership, it blurs the lines and it creates a lot of gray area. It creates resentment. Um, it creates communication issues, and it creates a really interesting and difficult dynamic between contractor, subcontractor, designer, and customer. Because everyone, including myself, has their own agenda, their own program, their own priorities. And what's important to me may be different than what's important to somebody else. That doesn't mean I'm right. That doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just different. And if I'm doing the job, if at the end of the day, when I walk out of this job, I own every single aspect of this kitchen, this bathroom, this built-in, right? I own, and it's as simple as if I install a built-in, I own the hardware that connects the boxes. I own the primer. I own the finish that's on the boxes. If there's an issue with the finish, oh, my cat's at the door just scared me. If I have an issue with the finish and the finish fails, I owned that finish. I selected that finish. I chose to use that finish. Now, what if I had a designer who selected a specific paint, wanted it applied a certain way, and that finish failed? Who owns that? Who owns refinishing that cabinetry? If it wasn't the product that I chose to use, I don't feel as though I should own that, but I want to because in that position, I feel I'm not going to walk away from that project and say, yeah, this is good. So whether I'm going to eat that cost or not, or somebody else is going to pay for it, it's just a conversation that I don't want to have. I would rather own the conversation with the customer. I would rather own the selection as far as the type of finish that I use, and I want to own everything because for me, I'm going to own everything. So I would rather not have to rely on somebody else determining a fix, a resolution, and what we should do moving forward when I know what's right and when I know what is wrong. And again, you can look at this any angle that you want to look at a job. It can be from fixtures, it could be from subs, right? Subs. You use certain subs all the time. Say I use a countertop company and the designer specs a different countertop company because that's who they selected the stone with. And right, the customers went and they chose a specific stone and they have loyalty to this stone company, regardless of whether there are kickbacks or not. There's a loyalty and there's a stone selected there. So now I have to manage a sub that I don't typically manage. I've managed dozens of countertop subs. I've had a lot of really bad experiences and I've had a lot of really good experiences. But the subs that I use for the reasons that I use them. I use them whether their pricing is a little bit better, whether their turnaround's a little bit better, or whether it's just quality, 100% quality. So I'm going to make the decision on who we're going to use on this project based on the program, the budget, and what the customers want. And sometimes it's just what selections certain stone yards have. So I know how to manage these subs. I know when there's issues, how they're going to fix these. So now when I'm using a sub that I don't typically use and they use standards that are different than mine, or there's issues, I own fixing those issues, even though this is not the sub that I wanted to use. So now it makes my life more difficult. I'm pulling teeth to get things fixed. Um, I'm having issues and callbacks, and I don't have a point of contact that I know as well, and it makes it really hard for me. There's certain things that I do on my jobs that my subs know, hey, this is just our standard, and yeah, I can manage people, but I don't want to hover and micromanage somebody to the point where it's like, yeah, you're installing countertops and I'm going to spend 4 hours just hovering over you. I have other things I want to do. I have other things that we need to do. And I want to know that, hey, I've spent years, whoa, purse. I spent years managing the subs that I have, and we know the pinch points and we know the issues. Oh God, he's going behind the window. And I know how to manage them. They know my expectation. They know what my standards are, and it's simple and it's consistent and there's no gray area. And that's what I want, right? It's the same thing with a customer. Hey, we want you to do our kitchen, but we have this plumber that we use. So then I'm using a plumber that I'm not familiar with that has different standards, uses different materials, does things a different way. His schedule isn't the same as mine. It really complicates things, and at the end of the day, it's not my product. So ownership to me is about creating a product and creating an experience that's a TRG experience, and the only way that I feel as though I can do that is by owning every aspect and contractually owning every aspect of every project. And that's from design through completion. And if you are interested in, hey, how would this look with design? It's fairly simple, right? If I have to hire an architect or I'm going to hire an interior designer, and a customer comes to me and they say, "Hey, we have this project that we want to do. We're not sure how you work, but we're looking to redo our kitchen." It's like, okay, great. Here's how I work. I'm not necessarily going to do your kitchen design, but I have a handful of people who can do that for you. We can either hire a designer, they can do a kitchen layout, which we can bring to a cabinet company. I can supply the cabinets, or we can just have a cabinet company come out and do the kitchen layout, and then we'll handle the rest of the design around that based on if they feel there's things that we should move around, utilities, whatever that may be. There's a few ways that we can address this, but the first thing would be to get a design contract in place. So if I'm hiring an architect or a designer or a kitchen showroom, I'm going to call each one of those people and I'm going to say, hey, I have a customer who's looking to do their kitchen. I want to sign them up prior to completing a design. What do you need to get things going? Most of the time, the kitchen designer is going to say, hey, nothing at all. Send them out here. We'll schedule an appointment. We'll go out to their job. We'll measure. We can't hand them over designs until we sell the kitchen. Um, I can be like, "Hey, will you hand me designs?" I will not give them to the customer just so that I know. They know that I'm not gonna shop that kitchen. They know I'm not gonna take that design. But I if their stipulation is that I don't give the customers the, design of their kitchen, that's perfectly fine with me. If I say, "Hey, what's it gonna cost for me to be able to own that design?" They'll give me a fee to do that. So I'll budget for that in my pre-construction design. Same thing with an interior designer and architect. Hey, I have this kitchen coming up. Here's the address, here's the scope, here's the pictures. How much time is it going to take you to design the space? There's some structurals here. We're going to move this, move that. Here's our idea. Usually that's around 32 hours worth of work. Here's my rate. Okay, so now I own that design. I establish a contract with the customer and I say, hey, we're budgeting between 24 and 40 hours for pre-construction design on this. Here's the rate. Here's what we think this is going to be. I'm going to take a deposit of half that amount, a third of that amount. And as we move forward in design, we will bill you on X amount of rate interval per hour. Um, that's how I'm going to hold that contract. I'm not doing the kitchen design. I'm not designing the kitchens, but I'm responsible for that. So now when the designer goes and they measure the kitchen, I'm there. I'm setting up a laser line to establish how far out the floor is out so that, issues that I see where it's like, yeah, we're going to be a little close to that, or we got to watch out. That's really thick casing with the back band. We're going to have an extra big filler on there. My eyes are looking at it from a design, from a contractor's perspective, working alongside the designer or the kitchen designer. But I own that, even though I'm not doing the design. That's what I want. I don't want to send somebody to a job or somebody come to me and say, hey, here's a kitchen that we're looking to do. We have everything in place, and be like, oh, yep, signed up for it, good to go. You provide everything, I'll show up and do the work, because it's created too many issues for me. Um, and that's not, I'm not harping on people for making mistakes. Like, everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I screw shit up. Um, but I think that people fix mistakes differently. And again, that's not right or wrong. But I know that typically I want to do things a different way than most other people. So if it's my project and I have my name on it, I want to make sure that everything goes according to my plan. And that's why I want to handle everything and I want to own everything. And I want to contractually own design. I want to contractually own the work, supplying the fixtures, everything else, because I don't want to have the conversation with the designer, with with the customer. I don't want to have to think about self-preservation while protecting somebody else. Like, I just want to do what's right, and I want to make the job right. I want to handle the fixes. I want to make sure that they're done right. I want to make sure that, like, hey, if there's an issue that I'm concerned with, I want to bring the customer in and be like, hey, this is what I'm running into here. I screwed this up. We could order a new cabinet. It's going to be like 6, 8 weeks. I'm really sorry about that. Or we could, I could get this material. I could field modify this. I could get the finish from the cabinet company. We can spray this in place and nobody will know the difference. It's not going to cost you any more money. Either way, it's my screw up. I'll fix it. But these are the two plans. Would you rather have a brand new cabinet and order it, or would you rather me make a field modification here and fix it? And I want to involve them in that process because it's their kitchen. They're paying for it. And it was my screw up. I don't want to have to make fixes behind. Sorry, I'm moving my cat. I don't want to have to make fixes behind somebody's back and them not know. I mean, I'm not going to tell them every little hiccup and issue that we run into, but when it's something big and something major, I want them to be a part of that process, um, as to how to fix it, because they're going to have to live in the space, and I don't want to do something that they're not okay with. Um, that's just me. That's how I want to handle things, and I thought it was funny that I sat down and I wrote this blog post last night, and then the conversation with Chris ended up, um, leading itself down this path this morning. But I think ownership on a project is really, really important. It's really important for me. Um, and again, I want to make sure that people don't think that I'm complaining about this, that I'm harping on people, that, people aren't good enough to work on my project or design jobs for me. That's not the case. I just want things done right, and I don't want to band-aid fixes. And I don't want to have to charge people to fix things. I don't want to have to um, make people feel badly for screwing shit up, or like, hey, this shouldn't have been done this way. I'm perfectly fine with owning that myself and being like, yeah, we screwed up, or I missed that on the shop drawing, or yeah, that's just the wrong size. Like, but I signed off on it. So that's me. Lesson learned. Like, I'm fine with eating that. But then to go to somebody else and be like, hey, you have to pay for this, or make my customers pay for it because they're billing me hourly, or I'm billing them hourly, it's a really tough position to be put in, and I don't want to put anyone in that position. Um, I like the accountability. Like, don't get me wrong, it sucks at times. It's really tough. Like, it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of pressure, but you hired me. I want to ensure that everything that's going into my project is up to my standards, is up to my snuff. Um, it's it's really no a lot of times I integrate these analogies, right, where it could be a surgeon, it could be somebody in a restaurant, and it's like, do you wanna own a restaurant and somebody, like, design the menu for you, or do you wanna be a part of that construction of the menu? Do you want to be a surgeon and have somebody else specing what parts you're putting in somebody's body, or do you want to pick and choose what works because you know that it works? I just feel that our reputation as contractors and our relationships with customers and our product is so heavily dependent on every aspect of that and the decisions that we make and the mistakes that we make and how we fix them, that I want to be in control of that. Um, and I want to own all of that, and I want that accountability. And I don't want anyone on my project, including myself, to have a foot out the door because, hey, I didn't supply that. It was provided to me. Like, we'll just put it up because that's what they said to do, or that's what the drawing shows. Like, I don't want that foot out the door, tiptoeing on one side of the fence versus the other. I want everyone to be both feet 100% in, fully accountable, fully responsible, and that begins and ends with me. So, that's my podcast for this week. That's my blog post for this week. It's about project ownership and why that's important and how that lesson was really reaffirmed this year for me, moving forward, that I've had these systems and I've had these standards in place for a long time. And for whatever reason, this year I played by some other people's rules. Like I said, maybe it was just I didn't ask the right questions. Maybe I had on rose colored glasses. 100% my fault. I allowed it. But now I need to make a change and I need to switch some things up. So I'm going to go back to saying, "Hey, this is our process. This is how we work. Appreciate the opportunity, but it's not up my alley." And go from there because that seems to be what works best for me. But I'd be interested to hear what works best for you guys. How much of a project you want to own? If you prefer people to take more stake, take more ownership in it, or if it's easier at the end of the day to get to project completion and be content and happy with it if others own different aspects of the project. So definitely reach out to our Modern Craftsman Instagram website or my personal website and let me know. That's Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com. Had a consulting call this morning. I have a consulting call this evening. I have two more calls lined up for next week and somebody else that I'm looking to schedule for the week after that. So I try not to schedule these things more than a week or two in advance. So it winds up being first come, first serve. Um, all the conversations I'd have with everyone have been great. I have a handful of guys who call me on a regular basis. And then I have a handful that are just one off. Hey, we have a question about this. We have a question about that. How do we integrate this into our business? But I actually want to start following back up with some people and checking as to how these changes made a difference and asking them for their insight on the call, and how equitable it has been and how much it makes sense for them to do and how much if it was helpful. So if you do want to hop on a consulting call, if you have a question about life, business, trades, performing a certain task, it could be unique to carpentry, painting, whatever it may be, shoot me an email, Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com. I'll let you know the rate, when I schedule them, how to get set up, and then I could send you an invite, a calendar invite to get going. So I appreciate everyone. I appreciate our sponsors. I'll catch you guys next week. Have a good one.